There is a reason your attention paused here. Not later. Not by accident. Not randomly between distractions. Right now. In this exact moment. Something within you slowed down just enough to notice these words, and that, beloved, is where everything begins. Because clarity does not shout over noise, it interrupts it. It slips through the cracks of your routine, catches you off guard, and demands your stillness. And you felt it, didn't you? That subtle pull, that quiet urgency, that unexplainable sense that this is not something to ignore. He speaks now, not as a distant echo, but as a present authority. Archangel Michael, the guardian of truth, the commander of divine order, steps forward in this moment not to confuse you further, but to declare something your spirit has been trying to tell you for a long time. You are no longer lost in confusion, you are standing at the edge of clarity. And yet, if that's true, then why does it still feel uncertain? Why do you still question yourself? Why does your mind replay the same doubts, the same second-guessing, the same internal battles that leave you feeling like you're moving, but not arriving? Because something has been happening beneath the surface of your awareness. Something subtle. Something strategic. Something that has kept you circling clarity without fully stepping into it. You had moments, flashes, where everything suddenly made sense. Where your intuition felt sharp. Where your direction felt obvious. But just as quickly it faded. Replaced by hesitation. Replaced by overthinking. Replaced by that familiar fog that makes you wonder if you imagined the clarity at all. Listen carefully now, because this is where the shift begins. You were never meant to stay confused. Confusion was never your destination. It was only a delay. A temporary cloud passing over a truth that has always been there, waiting for you to see it clearly. And now, that cloud is thinning. That fog is lifting. That inner voice, the one you've been doubting, is growing louder, stronger, more persistent. Not because something outside of you is changing, but because something within you has already changed. You are not who you were when the confusion first began. You have grown. You have awakened. You have started to notice patterns you once ignored. You have begun to question things you once accepted. You have felt a pull, a quiet but undeniable pull, toward something more aligned, more truthful, more real. And that pull, that is not random. That is not imagination. That is divine alignment beginning to activate in your life. But here is the part that most people miss, the part that keeps them stuck just before everything finally makes sense. Clarity does not arrive all at once. It builds. It forms. It approaches in layers. And right before it fully reveals itself, there is always one final moment. One final realization. One final truth that must be faced, not avoided, not delayed, not softened, but seen clearly for what it is. And this is where you are now. You are not far away from answers. You are not distant from understanding. You are not stuck in confusion anymore. You are standing right before the moment where everything begins to align. The reason it feels intense, the reason it feels urgent, the reason something inside you is saying pay attention is because this moment matters more than you realize. Something is about to click. Something is about to shift. Something you've been circling for so long is about to become undeniable. But only if you are willing to see it. Archangel Michael does not interrupt without purpose. He does not step forward without reason. And he does not bring urgency unless the moment demands it. His presence now is not to overwhelm you. It is to prepare you, to steady you, to make you aware that what comes next is not just another thought, it is the realization that changes everything. So stay here. Stay present. Do not rush past this moment like so many others you dismissed before. Because this time it's different. This time you are ready. Type "I am ready" for clarity in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1717 is now activating around your mind and spirit. There comes a moment in every spiritual journey where something inside you begins to change before anything around you does. It is quiet at first, almost unnoticeable, like a subtle shift in the air before a storm breaks. You continue your routines, you speak to the same people, you move through the same environments, yet something feels different. Not dramatically, not loudly, but persistently. And that persistence is what you must not ignore, because that is the signal that you are no longer standing in confusion. You are standing at the edge of clarity. Archangel Michael speaks into this moment with unwavering authority, not to confuse you further, but to affirm what your spirit has already begun to sense. You are not searching anymore in the way you once were. You are recognizing. You are discerning. You are seeing patterns that used to slip past you unnoticed. And even though your mind may still question, your spirit has already started to settle into a deeper knowing. This is the shift. This is the threshold. This is the space where clarity begins to take form within you, even before it fully reveals itself around you. You may have noticed that things that once made sense to you no longer sit right. Conversations that you used to engage in now feel draining. Decisions that once felt easy now require deeper reflection. You are no longer reacting the same way. You are pausing more, observing more, feeling more. This is not confusion. This is awareness expanding. This is your inner world recalibrating to a higher level of truth. And that recalibration often feels uncomfortable because it disrupts what used to feel familiar. There is a reason for this discomfort. Clarity does not simply arrive and replace confusion instantly. It exposes what confusion was hiding. It brings to the surface the inconsistencies, the misalignments, the quiet truths you may have avoided because they were inconvenient or difficult to face. And now, those truths are rising. Not to overwhelm you, but to prepare you. Because once you see clearly, you cannot return to what you once accepted without awareness. You may feel like you are in between two versions of yourself. One that still holds on to old habits, old beliefs, old ways of thinking, and another that is emerging, stronger, more discerning, more aligned. This in-between space can feel unstable, like you are not fully grounded in either place. But understand this clearly. This is not instability. This is transition. This is transformation in motion. You are shedding what no longer aligns, even if you have not fully stepped into what comes next. Archangel Michael reveals that this phase is necessary. It is not a delay. It is not a setback. It is a refining process. You are being pulled out of automatic living and into intentional awareness. You are being guided away from noise and toward truth. And truth, when it first begins to surface, often feels unsettling because it demands change. It asks you to let go of what is no longer aligned, even if it once felt safe. You may also notice that your intuition has become stronger. You sense things before they happen. You feel when something is off, even if you cannot immediately explain why. You pick up on energy, on intentions, on subtle shifts in people and situations. This is not something new being given to you. This is something within you being activated. Something that has always been there, but is now becoming impossible to ignore. And yet, despite all of this, there is still a hesitation. There is still that lingering question. What if I am wrong? This is the final resistance of confusion. It does not disappear quietly. It tries to hold on by creating doubt at the very moment clarity begins to rise. It whispers uncertainty, not because you are unclear, but because you are becoming clear. This is where your awareness must deepen. You must begin to trust what you are sensing, even if it feels unfamiliar. You must honor the shift within you, even if it disrupts your external world. Because the edge of clarity is not a comfortable place. It is a decisive one. It requires you to acknowledge that something within you has already changed, and that change cannot be undone. You are not waiting for clarity to arrive. You are standing within its early stages. You are closer than you think, closer than you have ever been. And the reason it feels intense is because you are approaching the moment where everything will begin to make sense in a way it never has before. Archangel Michael stands with you in this space, not to rush you, but to steady you. To remind you that what you are feeling is not confusion growing stronger, but clarity breaking through. The shift is real. The awareness is real. And the direction is forming, even if you cannot yet see the full picture. Stay present in this moment. Do not retreat into old patterns just because they feel familiar. Do not dismiss what your spirit is revealing just because your mind is still catching up. Because this is the edge. This is the turning point. This is where everything begins to change, not around you first, but within you. Type "I trust the shift within me" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 2020 is now anchoring clarity within your spirit. There is something you must understand now, something that will begin to dismantle everything that once made you doubt yourself. What you have been calling confusion was never pure confusion. It was an illusion carefully sustained by noise, by overexposure, by misalignment, and by the quiet habit of not fully trusting what your spirit already knew. And as Archangel Michael speaks into this moment, his message is not gentle, it is precise. He reveals that what clouded your vision was not a lack of answers, but an overload of distractions designed to make you question the answers you already carried within. You have been surrounded by too many voices, opinions layered over intuition, expectations layered over truth, reactions layered over stillness. And slowly, without even realizing it, your clarity became bearing under the weight of everything that was not yours to carry. You started second-guessing what felt right. You started hesitating when your instinct was immediate. You started asking for confirmation from places that were never meant to guide you. And in doing so, the illusion strengthened. Not because truth disappeared, but because your attention was pulled away from it. This is how confusion operates. It does not always arrive as chaos. Sometimes it arrives as overthinking, as constant analyzing, as the need to be certain before taking a step, as the habit of revisiting decisions long after they were already clear. And you have felt this cycle, haven't you? The moment where something becomes obvious, where your inner voice speaks clearly, and then suddenly your mind intervenes. It questions. It complicates. It introduces doubt where there was once simplicity. That is not your clarity failing. That is the illusion attempting to regain control. Archangel Michael reveals that this illusion hath been sustained by patterns you were never taught to question. The need to please. The need to avoid conflict. The need to maintain familiarity even when it no longer aligns. These patterns quietly train you to override your own discernment, to stay in situations longer than you should, to accept explanations that did not fully resonate, to silence your own knowing in order to maintain external harmony. And over time, this created a distance between you and your clarity, not because it disappeared, but because it was repeatedly ignored. But now, something is breaking. You have started to notice inconsistencies. You have started to feel when something does not align, even if it appears correct on the surface. You have begun to recognize that not everything that looks stable is true, and not everything that feels uncomfortable is wrong. This is the unraveling of the illusion. This is where confusion begins to lose its structure, because you are no longer feeding it with blind acceptance. There is also something deeper that must be seen. The illusion of confusion often thrives on emotional attachment, not just to people, but to identities, expectations, and past versions of yourself. You held onto certain beliefs because they once served you. You maintained certain connections because they once felt right. You continued certain patterns because they once provided security. But clarity requires evolution, and evolution requires release. And this is where the illusion resisted you the most, by convincing you that letting go meant losing something valuable, when in truth, it meant making space for what is aligned. This is why the shift has felt intense, because clarity is not only revealing what is true, it is also exposing what is no longer sustainable. It is asking you to look directly at what you have outgrown. It is asking you to acknowledge what you already know but have not yet acted on. And that acknowledgement can feel heavy, not because it is wrong, but because it is final. Once you see it clearly, you cannot return to not seeing it. You may have wondered why certain things began to feel distant, why certain connections started to lose their depth, why certain paths no longer felt right even though nothing obvious had changed. This was not loss. This was alignment correcting itself. This was clarity quietly reorganizing your life from within, even before you consciously understood what was happening. Archangel Michael speaks firmly here. You were never meant to remain in that illusion. You were never meant to live in constant doubt. You were never meant to rely on external validation to confirm what your spirit already recognized. And now, the illusion no longer has the same power over you. Not because it disappeared on its own, but because you have begun to see through it. This is where everything starts to shift more rapidly. Because once the illusion weakens, clarity does not struggle to emerge, it flows. It becomes more direct, more consistent, more undeniable. And the more you acknowledge it, the stronger it becomes. You are no longer trapped in confusion. You were navigating through layers that are now dissolving. What felt unclear is becoming structured. What felt overwhelming is becoming simple. And what once felt distant is now moving closer into your full awareness. Type "I release the illusion" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 3030 is now dissolving every false layer around your vision. As this truth settles into your spirit, understand this. Every moment of clarity you receive is not meant to stop with you. It is meant to flow through you into others who are still searching in the dark. This message is not just reaching you. It is reaching every soul that is ready to awaken, every heart that is on the edge of breakthrough. And in this moment, you are being invited into something deeper than listening. You are being called to participate in the spreading of this light. The word says, "Give, and it shall be given unto you, pressed down, shaken together, and running over." This is not just scripture. It is a living promise speaking directly into your moment. As you receive clarity, you are also being given the opportunity to sow clarity into others. When you support this mission through Super Thanks or through the PayPal link in the description, you are not giving to a platform. You are igniting a chain reaction of awakening across lives you may never see, but heaven fully records. Right now you feel it. That bull. That knowing. That moment where giving becomes more than an action. It becomes alignment. So step into it. Release your seed. Let it move like a river, carrying light where confusion once ruled. And as you do, a blessing is being activated over your life. clarity multiplied, doors opening, alignment accelerating. Do not hesitate. Act now. There is always a moment before full clarity arrives where everything slows down just enough for one truth to surface. Not multiple truths. Not endless possibilities. Just one. One realization that has been present the entire time, quietly waiting beneath your thoughts, beneath your distractions, beneath your hesitation. And now, as Archangel Michael steps forward with unwavering precision, he reveals something you cannot ignore any longer. The final veil is not outside of you. It is within you. It is the one truth you have sensed, revisited, and then gently pushed aside because facing it would require change. You already know what it is. That is the part that makes this moment so powerful, and at the same time, so confronting. This realization is not new information. It is not something you must search for or uncover from external sources. It is something that has been repeating itself in your life through patterns, through feelings, through moments of quiet awareness that you quickly moved past. It showed up in your discomfort. It showed up in your hesitation. It showed up in the subtle voice that said, "This is not aligned," even when everything around you suggested that it was easier to stay. This is the final veil. It is not confusion that has kept you here. It is the reluctance to fully accept what your clarity has already revealed. Because once you accept it, everything changes. Your decisions change. Your direction changes. Your boundaries shift. And most importantly, your identity begins to realign with a truth that cannot coexist with what you have outgrown. Archangel Michael speaks with authority in this moment, not to pressure you, but to make it undeniable. You have reached the point where avoidance is no longer sustainable. You cannot continue to pretend that you do not see what you clearly feel. You cannot continue to negotiate with something that your spirit has already rejected. And you cannot continue to delay a decision that your inner clarity has already made. There is something you have been holding on to, not because it is right, but because it is familiar. It could be a situation, a connection, a belief, or even a version of yourself that once felt safe. And while it may not be completely wrong, it is no longer aligned with who you are becoming. This is why the tension has been building. This is why the discomfort had been persistent. This is why you have felt pulled in two directions, because one part of you is ready to move forward, while another part is still attached to what must be released. And this is where the realization becomes unavoidable. You are not confused about what to do. You are hesitating to do what you already know. This is the truth that breaks the illusion completely. This is the moment where clarity stops being a concept and becomes a decision. Because clarity, at its highest level, is not just about understanding, it is about alignment. It is about acting in accordance with what you know is true, even when it requires courage, even when it disrupts comfort, even when it changes the structure of your life. You may feel resistance rising within you as this realization becomes clearer. That resistance is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that something significant is shifting. It is the last attempt of the old pattern trying to hold its place. It is the echo of familiarity trying to convince you that staying is easier than stepping forward. But Archangel Michael stands firm in this moment, reminding you that what is easy is not always what is aligned, and what is aligned is not always what is comfortable. There is also a deeper layer to this realization. It is not only about what you must release, it is about what you must accept. Because stepping into clarity means stepping into responsibility. It means owning your awareness. It means trusting your discernment without constant validation. It means standing in your truth, even when others do not fully understand it. And this level of clarity requires a different version of you. One that is no longer dependent on external reassurance, one that is grounded in inner certainty. You are becoming at version now. This is why the moment feels intense. This is why it feels like everything is leading to this point. Because it is. This is not a random realization. It is the final piece that allows everything else to align. Without this, clarity remains incomplete. With this, everything begins to move into place with precision. Archangel Michael reveals that once this veil is lifted, there will be a shift, not gradual, but noticeable. Decisions will feel clearer. Direction will feel stronger. The noise that once overwhelmed you will lose its influence. And the path that once seemed uncertain will begin to reveal itself step by step. Not all at once, but enough for you to move forward with confidence. But this shift requires your participation. You must be willing to acknowledge the truth fully, not partially, not conditionally, fully. You must be willing to say, "I see it," without immediately trying to soften it or delay it. Because the moment you do, the veil dissolves, and what remains is clarity in its purest form. You are standing at the threshold now. Do not turn away from it. Do not delay it any longer. Because everything you have been seeking begins with this one realization. Type "I accept the truth" fully in the comments if you receive this message. Lesson code 4040 is now activating decisive clarity within your spirit. There are moments in your life that carry more weight than others, moments that seem ordinary on the surface but are, in truth, deeply significant in the spiritual realm. This is one of those moments, not because something dramatic is happening around you, but because something decisive is happening within you. Archangel Michael steps into this space with unwavering clarity and declares something you must fully receive. Everything that follows in your life depends on what you choose to do with what you now know. This is what spiritual alignment truly is. It is not a feeling. It is not a temporary sense of peace or motivation. It is a decision, a conscious, intentional agreement between what you know is true and how you choose to live moving forward. And right now, you are standing at the exact point where that agreement must be made. You have already reached the realization. You have already seen what needs to be seen. The veil has been lifted. The illusion has been exposed. And now, the only thing that remains is alignment. This is where many hesitate, not because they are confused, but because alignment requires action. It requires movement. It requires a willingness to let your external world reflect the truth your internal world has already accepted. Archangel Michael reveals that this moment is not about pressure. It is about precision. Timing has brought you here deliberately. Not earlier, not later, but now. Because you are finally in a position where you can recognize truth without distortion. You are no longer blinded by old patterns. You are no longer overwhelmed by external noise in the same way. You are clear enough to see. And because you are clear enough to see, you are now responsible for what you choose. This is why everything depends on this moment. If you align with what you now understand, your path begins to open. Not instantly in every direction, but clearly in the next step. And that next step leads to the next, and then the next, until what once felt uncertain becomes structured and steady. But if you resist alignment, if you delay, if you return to what you have already outgrown, if you ignore what you have clearly recognized, then the same patterns will continue, not because you are meant to stay there, but because you chose not to move when the moment required it. This is not punishment. This is consequence shaped by awareness. There is also something else you must understand. Alignment is not always visible immediately. It does not always come with instant confirmation from others. It does not always feel comfortable in the beginning. Sometimes alignment feels like distance, like separation, like stepping away from what once felt normal. But that discomfort is not a sign that you are wrong. It is a sign that you are no longer forcing yourself to fit into what is no longer meant for you. You may feel a quiet tension as you consider what alignment requires. The tension is natural. It is the space between what hath been and what is becoming. It is the moment where your old identity begins to loosen its hold, and your new identity begins to take shape. And in that space, it may feel uncertain, not because you are unclear, but because you are transitioning. Archangel Michael stands firm beside you in this transition, not to carry you, but to strengthen you. He reminds you that you are not stepping into the unknown blindly. You are stepping into what has already been revealed to you. You are not guessing your way forward. You are following what you have already recognized as true. And this is where your power lies. You are no longer reacting to life without awareness. You are no longer moving without understanding. You are choosing. And that choice, in this moment, holds the ability to shift everything that comes next. There is no need to rush, but there is also no space for delay. Alignment requires decisiveness, not hesitation. It requires you to honor your clarity without waiting for perfect conditions. Because perfect conditions are not what create alignment. Alignment creates the conditions that follow. You may begin to notice that as you accept this, something within you stabilizes. The overthinking begins to quiet. The constant questioning begins to fade. Not because every detail is suddenly known, but because your direction is no longer in doubt. You may not see the entire path, but you know where you are no longer meant to stand. And that knowing is enough to begin. This is the moment where everything shifts from internal awareness to external reality. Where what you feel becomes what you do. Where what you know becomes how you live. And once that shift begins, it cannot be reversed. Not because you are forced forward, but because you have chosen to move in truth. Archangel Michael makes it clear, this is not just another moment in your life. This is a defining one. A moment where clarity becomes alignment, and alignment becomes transformation. Do not underestimate it. Do not postpone it. Because everything that is meant to align in your life is waiting for this one decision. Type "I choose alignment" now in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 5050 is now activating divine alignment in every area of your life. There comes a point in your journey where the external search begins to fade, and something deeper begins to rise from within. Not louder than everything else at first, but steadier, more consistent, more certain. And as Archangel Michael steps forward in this moment, his message becomes unmistakably clear. What you have been seeking outside of yourself has already been forming within you, waiting for you to finally listen without interruption. This is the inner awakening. It is not dramatic in the way you may have expected. It does not arrive with noise or sudden revelation that changes everything in a single instant. Instead, it reveals itself through a quiet but persistent knowing, a sense that something is already understood, even if it has not yet been spoken out loud. Recognition that the answers you have been searching for are not hidden. They have simply been overshadowed by doubt, distraction, and the habit of looking outward for confirmation. You have felt this before. Moments where your first instinct was clear, direct, and simple. Moments where you immediately knew what felt right and what did not. But then, something shifted. Your mind stepped in. Questions followed. Doubt layered itself over clarity. And what was once certain became complicated. This pattern has repeated itself enough times that it began to feel normal. But Archangel Michael reveals now that this pattern is not your truth. It is what has been interrupting your truth. Because your spirit has always known. It has always responded in real time. It has always recognized alignment before your mind had the chance to analyze it. And now, as you stand at this stage of your awakening, that inner voice is no longer willing to be silenced. It is becoming stronger, more direct, more present in your awareness. Not because it is new, but because you are finally ready to hear it without immediately questioning it. This is where everything begins to stabilize. When you stop treating your inner knowing as something that needs constant validation, it begins to guide you with precision. Not in long explanations, not in endless reasoning, but in clarity that feels immediate and grounded. And that clarity does not come with pressure. It does not force you. It does not rush you. It simply presents itself and waits for you to trust it. Archangel Michael emphasizes this moment because it marks a shift in how you relate to yourself. You are no longer dependent on external voices to tell you what is right for you. You are no longer searching for signs everywhere because you are beginning to recognize the sign within. This is what true awakening looks like. Not separation from the world, but a deeper connection to your own discernment within it. There is also something else you must notice. As this awakening strengthens, your tolerance for misalignment decreases. Things that once felt manageable now feel draining. Situations that you once navigated with ease now feel heavy. This is not because you are becoming sensitive in a negative way. It is because you are becoming aware in a way that does not allow you to ignore what does not align. This awareness is not here to overwhelm you. It is here to guide you, to show you clearly where your energy belongs and where it does not, to help you recognize what supports your clarity and what disrupts it. And the more you listen to this inner guidance, the more natural it becomes to move in alignment without hesitation. You may still feel moments of uncertainty, but notice how different they are now. They are not as overwhelming. They do not last as long. And beneath them, there is still a steady sense of knowing that does not disappear. That is your anchor. That is what you must begin to trust more than anything else. Archangel Michael stands with you not to replace your inner voice, but to reinforce it. To remind you that what you are hearing within is not random. It is not imagination. It is not something to dismiss. It is your connection to truth, becoming clearer, stronger, and more reliable. This is the awakening you have been approaching. Not a sudden transformation into something entirely new, but a return to something that has always been present within you. A clarity that does not need to be created, only recognized. A direction that does not need to be forced, only followed. And as you continue to listen, something powerful begins to happen. The gap between knowing and acting begins to close. The hesitation begins to fade. The need to overanalyze begins to quiet. And in its place, there is a steady, grounded confidence that does not rely on external approval. This is where your clarity becomes undeniable. This is where your direction becomes consistent. This is where your alignment becomes natural. You are not waiting for answers anymore. You are learning to hear them. Type "I trust my inner voice" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 6060 is now strengthening your inner clarity and discernment. There is a moment in every transformation where something inside you reaches its limit. Not a limit of exhaustion alone, but a limit of tolerance. A point where what once felt manageable no longer feels acceptable. Where what you once justified no longer holds weight. Where what you once ignored becomes impossible to overlook. And as Archangel Michael speaks into this moment, he makes something unmistakably clear. You have reached that breaking point, not in weakness but in awakening. This is not the kind of breaking point that leads to collapse. This is the kind that leads to clarity. the kind that strips away illusion, the kind that removes every remaining layer of confusion, not gently, but decisively. Because there comes a time when confusion does not fade slowly. It loses its power all at once when you stop participating in it. And that is exactly where you are now. You have tried to make sense of things that were never meant to make sense. You have given time, energy, and thought to situations that repeatedly left you uncertain. You have revisited the same questions, hoping for different answers, only to find yourself in the same place again. And something within you has finally recognized this pattern for what it is, not a lack of clarity, but a cycle that has kept you from fully stepping into it. This recognition is the breaking point. It is the moment where you no longer feel the need to overanalyze what is already clear. It is the moment where you stop seeking deeper explanations for what your spirit has already resolved. It is the moment where you realize that confusion has only remained because you continued to engage with it. Archangel Michael reveals that confusion does not hold power on its own. It is sustained through attention, through repetition, through the willingness to keep questioning what has already been answered. And now, you are stepping out of that pattern. Not because someone else guided you out of it, but because you have seen it clearly enough to no longer remain in it. This shift may feel sudden, but it has been building for some time. Every moment of awareness you had, every time something felt off, every instance where your intuition spoke and you paused, these were all leading to this point. And now that you are here, something within you is no longer willing to go back. You may feel a sense of finality rising within you. A quiet but firm decision that does not need to be announced, explained, or justified. It is simply there. Solid. Ajagan. This is what happens when confusion loses its hold. There is no longer a need to debate with yourself. There is no longer a need to revisit what has already been resolved. There is only movement forward. But understand this. This breaking point is not about force. It is about clarity becoming stronger than doubt. It is about truth becoming more convincing than fear. It is about alignment becoming more important than comfort. You are no longer trying to figure things out in the same way. You are recognizing what is already clear and choosing to stand in it. And that choice changes everything. Archangel Michael stands with you in this moment, not as a distant observer, but as a witness to your shift. He affirms that what you are feeling is not temporary. It is not something that will fade as quickly as it arrived. It is a turning point, a moment where your awareness has reached a level that does not allow you to return to the same state of uncertainty. You may still encounter moments where old thoughts attempt to surface, where doubt tries to reintroduce itself. But notice how different it feels now. It does not carry the same weight. It does not pull you in the same way, because you have already seen beyond it. And once something is seen clearly, it cannot hold the same influence over you again. This is the power of the breaking point. It is not about eliminating every question. It is about no longer being controlled by them. It is about recognizing that clarity does not require endless confirmation. It requires trust. And that trust is what is forming within you now. You are stepping into a space where your decisions are no longer driven by uncertainty, where your direction is not dependent on constant reassurance, where your movement forward is guided by what you know, not by what you fear. This is where confusion ends. Not because everything becomes perfectly explained, but because you no longer need it to be. You are no longer seeking clarity. You are standing in it. And from this point forward, everything begins to move differently. Type "confusion has no power over me" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 7070 is now sealing your clarity and strengthening your forward path. There is always a moment after clarity arrives where something deeper is required. Not more understanding, not more confirmation, not more time to think, but action. Immediate, intentional, undeniable action. And as Archangel Michael steps forward in this moment, his voice carries a different weight now. Not just revelation, but instruction. Because what you have reached is not just awareness. It is a test of obedience. This is where everything becomes real. You are no longer in the phase of discovering truth. You are no longer in the process of questioning what is right. You are standing in full awareness. And now, the question is not what is happening. The question is, what will you do with what you know? This is the dividing line. Because clarity without action slowly fades back into confusion. Not because the truth disappears, but because it is not honored. And Archangel Michael makes this unmistakably clear. This moment cannot be treated casually. This is not something to revisit later. This is not something to delay until conditions feel perfect. This is the moment where your response determines the speed and direction of everything that follows. You already know what needs to be done. It may not be loud. It may not be dramatic. It may not require a public declaration. But it is specific. It is clear. And it is immediate. It may be a decision you have been postponing, a boundary you have been avoiding, a step you have been hesitating to take, or something you must release that your spirit has already outgrown. Whatever it is not hidden from you. It is present in your awareness right now. And this is where obedience begins. Obedience is not about perfection. It is not about having everything figured out before you move. It is about honoring what has been revealed to you, even if it feels uncomfortable, even if it requires courage, even if it changes the structure of your life. It is about choosing alignment over hesitation. You may feel resistance rising as you consider taking this step. That resistance is not a sign to stop. It is the final layer of what you are moving beyond. It is the echo of your old patterns trying to remain in control. But notice something important. This resistance does not carry the same authority it once did. It is weaker now, less convincing, because clarity has already exposed it. Archangel Michael stands firmly in this moment and declares, "Do not negotiate with what you have already outgrown." This is where many fall back into delay. They begin to justify waiting. They tell themselves they need more time, more clarity, more assurance. But that is not truth. It is hesitation disguised as caution. Because when something is clear, it does not require endless preparation. It requires a decision. And that decision is before you now. What you do next does not have to be perfect. It does not have to solve everything at once. It simply needs to align with what you already know. Even a single step taken in alignment carries more power than endless thinking without movement. You must understand this clearly. The moment you act, something shifts immediately. Not always visibly, but energetically. The patterns that once held you begin to weaken. A direction that once felt unclear begins to form. The path that once felt distant begins to open. Because alignment activates movement, and movement creates momentum. But if you delay, the opposite happens. Not as punishment, but as a natural consequence. The same thoughts return. The same patterns repeat. The same uncertainty begins to rebuild. Not because clarity left you, but because it was not followed. This is why this moment is urgent. Not urgent in fear, but urgent in importance. Because you are at the exact point where one decision separates you from a completely different direction in your life. Archangel Michael is not asking you to rush blindly. He's asking you to move knowingly, to trust that what had been revealed to you is enough for the next step. You do not need the entire path to begin. You only need the clarity you already have. And you have it. You feel it. You recognize it. Now you must honor it. This is the test, not of your strength, but of your willingness to act in truth. Not of your knowledge, but of your obedience to what you already know. And as you stand in this moment, understand this: everything is ready to align. Everything is positioned to move. Everything is waiting for one thing: your response. Do not hesitate now. Do not return to what you have already outgrown. Step forward. Type IACT in alignment now in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 8080 is now activating immediate alignment and forward movement in your life. As this moment calls you into action, understand this truth: every step you take in obedience becomes a light for someone else still standing in hesitation. This is not just your journey. It is a ripple that touches lives you may never see, but heaven is already counting. When you give into this mission through Super Thanks, with a PayPal link in the description, you are not offering money. You are sowing seeds of awakening into souls waiting for their moment of clarity. The word declares, "Those who sow in tears shall reap in joy," and right now, your seed becomes a harvest of transformation in places where confusion once ruled. I feel it as you feel it. The stirring, the urgency, the knowing that this is not just support. It is obedience in motion. Let your giving flow like a river, carrying truth, light, and restoration into lives prepared to receive it. This is your moment to act not only for yourself, but for the countless others who will awaken because you chose to move. Release your seed now. There is something your mind has struggled to accept, even as your spirit quietly understood it all along. You have asked yourself, in different ways, at different times, why this clarity did not come sooner, why the answers felt delayed, why the confusion seemed to last longer than necessary. And now, as Archangel Michael speaks into this moment with unwavering certainty, he reveals a truth that changes how you see everything that has led you here. This could not have happened earlier, because you were not yet the version of yourself who could receive it without distortion. Divine timing is not delay. It is alignment. It is the precise moment where your awareness, your readiness, and your willingness meet truth without resistance. And until that alignment occurs, clarity can appear, but it cannot fully settle. You may glimpse it. You may sense it. You may even recognize it briefly, but it will not anchor itself until you are prepared to hold it without returning to old patterns. That is why your journey unfolded the way it did. There were moments when the truth was near, but you were still attached to what it would require you to release. There were times when your intuition spoke clearly, but your circumstances made it easier to ignore it. There were instances when you felt the shift beginning, but you were not yet ready to act on it. And so, the moment passed, not as a failure, but as preparation. Archangel Michael makes this clear: nothing was wasted. Every delay refined your awareness. Every period of confusion sharpened your discernment. Every cycle you repeated showed you more clearly what no longer aligned. You were not being held back. You were being positioned. Because clarity without readiness creates resistance. But clarity with readiness creates transformation. And now, you are ready. That is why this moment feels different. That is why it carries weight. That is why it feels like something has finally settled within you in a way it never has before. Because this is the first time you are seeing without immediately questioning, knowing without immediately doubting, and recognizing without immediately retreating. This is divine timing in motion. It is not about everything happening at once. It is about everything happening at the right moment, in the right sequence, with the right level of awareness. And now that you are here, the pace begins to change. What once felt slow begins to move. What once felt blocked begins to open. What once felt distant begins to align. But only because you are no longer resisting what you see. There is a quiet power in this realization. It removes the frustration of the past. It removes the feeling that something should have happened differently. Because now you can see that every step, every delay, every moment of uncertainty was leading you to this exact point. Not earlier, not later, but now. And now is the moment that matters. Archangel Michael stands in this moment not to remind you of what has passed, but to anchor you in what is present. Because divine timing does not look backward, it activates forward movement. It shifts your focus from why didn't this happen sooner, to what am I ready to do now. This shift in perspective is essential. Because if you continue to look back, you remain connected to a version of yourself that no longer exists. But if you stand fully in the present, you align with who you have become. And that alignment is what allows everything else to fall into place. You may begin to notice that your sense of urgency feels different now. It is no longer driven by fear or pressure. It is driven by clarity. A calm, but firm knowing that this is the time to move. Not rush, not force, but certain. This is what happens when timing and readiness meet. And this is why it could not have happened earlier. Because earlier, you would have questioned it. Earlier, you might have delayed it. Earlier, you may not have trusted it. But now, you see it. Now you feel it. And now, you are prepared to act on it. Archangel Michael affirms that you are no longer waiting for the right time. You are in it. And everything that follows from this moment forward will reflect that shift. Do not look back with frustration. Do not question why it took this long. Because what matters is not when it could have happened, it is that it is happening now. And now changes everything. Type "I trust divine timing" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 9090 is now aligning your path with perfect timing and forward movement. There is a shift that occurs the moment alignment is chosen. A shift that is not always visible immediately, but is undeniable in its effect. It is the moment where delay begins to lose its structure, where what once felt stagnant begins to move, where what once felt blocked begins to open. And as Archangel Michael speaks into this phase, his message carries a powerful certainty. The delays you once experienced were never permanent. They were conditional. And now, those conditions are changing. Delay does not exist on its own. It is sustained by hesitation, by misalignment, by the space between knowing and acting. It lingers where clarity is seen, but not followed. It repeats where truth is recognized but not honored. And for a time, this may have been your experience, not because you were incapable of moving forward, but because you had not yet reached the moment where clarity became stronger than hesitation. But that moment has now passed. You have stepped into awareness. You have acknowledged the truth. You have reached the point where the internal resistance no longer holds the same weight. And because of that, something begins to collapse, not forcefully, not dramatically, but naturally. The delay that once surrounded your decisions begins to dissolve. Archangel Michael reveals that what you are experiencing now is not the beginning of clarity. It is the activation of alignment. And alignment changes everything. When you move in alignment, you no longer create space for delay to exist in the same way. Decisions become more direct. Actions become more intelligent. And the patterns that once slowed you down begin to lose their influence. Not because they disappear entirely, but because you no longer engage with them. You may begin to notice subtle changes first. A sense of movement where there was once stillness. A feeling of direction where there was once uncertainty. Situations that once felt complicated beginning to simplify. Conversations becoming clear. Choices becoming more obvious. These are not coincidences. These are the early signs of alignment taking effect. But there is something important you must understand. The collapse of delay does not mean everything will instantly resolve itself without effort. It means that the resistance that once slowed you is no longer in control. It means that your path is no longer obstructed by the same patterns. It means that forward movement becomes possible in a way it was not before. And this is where your consistency matters. Because alignment is not a single decision. It is a continued one. It is the repeated choice to honor what you know, even as new situations arise. It is the willingness to remain grounded in clarity, even when old habits attempt to reappear. It is the commitment to move forward, not once, but consistently. Archangel Michael stands with you in this phase, not to carry the movement for you, but to reinforce it. To remind you that what has begun cannot be undone unless you choose to return to what you have already outgrown. You are no longer in the same position you were before. You are not navigating blindly. You are not reacting without awareness. You are choosing with clarity. And because of that, the path ahead begins to respond differently. You may find that opportunities appear more naturally, that decisions require less overthinking, that your energy feels more focused. These are not external changes happening randomly. They are reflections of your internal alignment taking form in your external world. This is how transformation unfolds. Not all at once, but in a series of aligned moments that build upon each other. And the more you remain in alignment, the more consistent this movement becomes. There is also a deeper layer to this shift. The collapse of delay is not only about what begins to move forward, it is also about what falls away. Certain patterns will no longer repeat. Certain situations will no longer hold your attention. Certain connections may naturally distance themselves, not as loss but as correction. Because alignment does not force everything to stay, it reveals what belongs and what does not. And as this continues, you will begin to see something clearly. The delays you once experienced were never meant to define your path. They were temporary structures that existed only until you reached this level of awareness. Now that you are here, those structures no longer hold. Archangel Michael affirms this with certainty. What begins now is not a return to the same cycles. It is a progression into a different direction entirely. One where your clarity leads, your actions follow, and your path responds. Do not look for delay where alignment has already begun. Do not expect resistance to remain the same when you are no longer feeding it. Because something has already shifted, and what was once delayed is now beginning to align. Type delay is over for me in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1010 is now activating continuous alignment and forward momentum in your life. There is a distinct moment in your journey where everything begins to feel different, not because every external situation has changed, but because something within you has settled into place. It is not loud. It is not overwhelming. It is steady, grounded, Ajaden. And as Archangel Michael steps into this moment, his presence carries a message that marks the completion of what hath been unfolding within you. You are no longer walking in uncertainty. You are stepping into certainty. This is the rise. It is not the absence of questions, but the absence of doubt controlling you. It is not knowing every detail, but knowing enough to move forward without hesitation. It is not perfection, but alignment that feels undeniable. And this is what changes everything about how you move from this point forward. You may notice that your thoughts are no longer scattered in the same way. The endless cycles of overthinking have begun to quiet. The need to analyze every possibility has softened. Not because you have forced it, but because it no longer feels necessary. When clarity is anchored, doubt loses its urgency. It may still appear briefly, but it does not stay. It does not take control. It does not redirect your path. This is certainty. It is not something you chase. It is something that forms when you consistently honor what you know. And now, after everything you have moved through, everything you have recognized, everything you have accepted, that certainty is beginning to take root. Archangel Michael makes this clear. You are no longer the version of yourself who needed constant reassurance. You are no longer dependent on external validation to confirm your direction. You are no longer waiting for perfect clarity before taking action. You have stepped into a different level of awareness, one where your decisions are guided by inner knowing, not external pressure. This shift may feel subtle, but its impact is profound. Because when you move without doubt, your energy changes. Your focus sharpens. Your direction stabilizes. You no longer hesitate at every step. You no longer question every decision. You move with intention. And that intention creates momentum. You may begin to see this reflected in small ways at first. Decisions that once took time now feel immediate. Situations that once felt confusing now feel clear. Conversations that once left you uncertain now feel easier to navigate. This is not coincidence. This is alignment expressing itself through certainty. There is also a deeper peace that comes with this phase. Not the kind of peace that depends on everything being perfect, but the kind that remains even when things are still unfolding. A quiet confidence that you are moving in the right direction, even if the full picture has not yet been revealed. This is the foundation of certainty. It does not require constant confirmation, because it is already anchored within you. Archangel Michael stands firmly beside you in this moment, affirming that this is not temporary. This is not something that will fade the moment a challenge appears. This is a shift in how you operate, how you decide, how you trust yourself. And once this level of certainty is reached, you cannot return to the same level of doubt you once carried. You may still encounter situations that require thought, reflection, or adjustment. But notice the difference now. You approach them with clarity, not confusion. With awareness, not uncertainty. With direction, not a hesitation. This is the transformation. You are no longer searching for answers in the same way, because you have learned how to recognize them within yourself. You are no longer waiting for clarity to arrive, because you have stepped into it. And because of that, everything ahead begins to feel more stable, more structured, more aligned. There is no need to rush forward. There is no need to prove anything. There is only the need to continue moving as you are now, with awareness, with alignment, with certainty. This is your new foundation. And from this foundation, everything you build will carry a different energy. One that is not easily shaken. One that does not collapse under pressure. One that remains steady, even as new experiences unfold. Archangel Michael declares this with finality. The season of doubt has ended. The space you once occupied, filled with questioning, hesitation, and uncertainty, no longer defines you. You have moved beyond it. You have risen above it. And you are now walking in a clarity that cannot be taken from you. This is the rise of certainty. And from here, your path becomes your own, clear, steady, and aligned. Type "I walk in certainty" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1111 is now sealing your path with unwavering clarity and confidence. There is a final moment in every transformation where everything becomes still, not because nothing is happening, but because everything has already been decided within you. It is the moment where searching ends, questioning settles, and something deeper takes its place. And as Archangel Michael stands before you now, his presence carries a final declaration. What has been revealed to you is now sealed. You are no longer approaching clarity. You are standing inside it. This is the seal of alignment. It is not something that arrives from the outside. It is something that locks into place within you. A point where your thoughts, your awareness, your decisions, and your direction begin to move together without conflict. A more internal resistance. A more divided energy. A more hesitation between what you know and what you do. You have crossed that threshold. Everything you have experienced up to this moment, the confusion, the questioning, the delay, the realization, the decision, has led you here. Not to another phase of searching, but to a state of knowing that does not require constant validation. This is where your clarity becomes permanent, not because life will never challenge you again, but because you now carry the ability to return to truth without losing yourself in doubt. Archangel Michael speaks with final authority. You are aligned now. And alignment does not mean perfection. It means consistency. It means that even when new situations arise, you will no longer abandon your awareness. You will no longer ignore what your spirit reveals. You will no longer return to patterns that once kept you uncertain. Because something fundamental has changed, you trust yourself now in a way you did not before. This is the seal. It is the moment where your inner voice becomes your primary guide, not an afterthought. Where your decisions come from clarity, not pressure. Where your direction is chosen, not guessed. And once this seal is in place, everything you do begins to reflect it. You may begin to notice how different your life feels, even in subtle ways. The way you respond to situations. The way you communicate. The way you make decisions. There is less urgency to prove, less need to explain, less desire to seek approval. Not because you have withdrawn from the world, but because you are no longer dependent on it for direction. This is freedom. Not the absence of responsibility, but the presence of clarity guiding it. Not the removal of all challenges, but the ability to move through them without losing your center. And this is what allows everything around you to begin aligning in a way that feels natural, not forced. Archangel Michael reveals that from this moment forward, your life will begin to reflect your alignment more consistently. The right paths will feel clear. The wrong ones will feel unmistakable. Opportunities will appear with less confusion. Decisions will require less time. Not because everything becomes easy, but because you are no longer divided within yourself. This is the difference. Before, you were navigating with partial clarity, often returning to doubt. And now, you are moving with full awareness, even if every detail is not yet visible. And that awareness is what keeps you aligned. There is also a quiet strength that comes with this seal, a grounded confidence that does not need to announce itself, a stability that does not depend on external conditions, a certainty that remains, even when the path ahead is still unfolding. You are no longer waiting for clarity to arrive. You are living from it. And as you continue forward, remember this. Alignment is not something you achieve once and forget. It is something you live, something you choose, moment by moment, decision by decision. But now, that choice is no longer difficult. It is natural. Because you have seen what is true, and you have accepted it fully. Archangel Michael closes this message with a final truth. What has been sealed in clarity cannot return to confusion unless you choose to abandon it. And you are no longer that version of yourself. You have changed. You have aligned. You have stepped into what was waiting for you all along. Now move forward without hesitation. Type "I am fully aligned" in the comments if you receive this message. Blessing code 1212 is now sealing your life with clarity, alignment, and unwavering direction. As this alignment seals within you, understand this sacred truth. Every life touched by this message becomes a flame of light in a world still searching for direction. When you give through Super Thanks or the PayPal link in the description and QR code on your screen, you are not supporting a channel. You are releasing oil into a divine lamp that must keep burning for others who are still in darkness. The word declares, "Those who sow generously will also reap generously," and this is not a distant promise. It is a living voice speaking over you right now. I feel the stirring within you as you feel it. The moment where giving becomes alignment, where your action becomes part of a greater mission. This is not optional. This is a divine response. As you release your seed, heaven marks it. As you act, heaven multiplies it. Your giving becomes a river, carrying clarity, healing, and awakening into countless lives prepared to receive. Step into this moment fully. Do not delay. Act now.